Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. As we all know, in the year of COVID pandemic, but technology is a blessing and a curse sometimes. But I wanted to thank you all for tuning in. As Women's History Month comes to a close, the WCDP wanted to hold an event that looks back at how far we've come while celebrating some of the trailblazing women in Tennessee and taking a look at the issues that are affecting women in 2022. I'm so happy to be joined by three women who are empowering women working towards a more equitable Tennessee tonight for our discussion. And we're going to touch on topics ranging from women's history to equality and legislation that we'd like to see passed, and give you the opportunity to ask some questions and learn how you can become involved in our organizations as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists tonight. Hello, welcome everyone. It's good to see you all. Adrienne Packus-Gillen is active in the state of Tennessee with organizations focused on women in education. She currently serves as president of the Tennessee Women's Political Caucus and vice president of the Tennessee Women's Suffrage Monument. Adrienne is serving her second term on the advisory board of the Facing History and Ourselves for Memphis. And she's also active in local politics, and was recently elected to her third term on the Tennessee Democratic Party State Executive Committee, where she serves on the Personnel Committee for the party. She has had the honor to represent Tennessee as a delegate at several Democratic National Conventions. Adrienne received her MBA from the University of Georgia and her undergraduate degree in political science from Mississippi State University. She and her husband, Bill, live in Germantown, Tennessee, with their dog, Flynn. Hi, Adrienne, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Great. Kelly Northcutt lives in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts from Middle Tennessee State University, which led to her career as a graphic designer. Kelly is the mother of 3 grown children and 1 young, energetic dog. She ran for State Senate District 13 in 2018 and lost, but she now has plans to run again in 2022 and will win. Kelly worked as a field organizer for Marquita Bradshaw's U.S. Senate campaign in 2020, and she is currently serving as the chair of the Rutherford County Democratic Party, where she's fighting to support and elect more Democrats, more minorities, and more women to public office. Hello, Kelly. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited about this topic.
Great. Susan Yoakum is a member of the LGBTQ plus community and is president of Rutherford County Democratic Women, also known as Sue. They live with their partner in Cannon County and are visibly out in Woodbury as both non-binary, transmasculine, and Democrat. When Sue lived in Chicago, they were a member of the Lesbian Adventure Advocacy Group. Assigned female at birth, Sue answers to any pronoun. Welcome, Sue. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Okay. Well, to kick things off, I think that we should get started with an overview of a very pivotal moment in Tennessee history, which was the ratification of the 19th Amendment. As you and the audience probably know, last year marked the 100th anniversary of the passing of the amendment that gave white women the right to vote. It's important to make that distinction. There was still a lot of work to be done, as we know, back then and today. And I thought that, Adrienne, would you tell us a little bit more about that event and what it meant for the women of Tennessee?
Well, again, thank you, Jen, so much for having me on this evening. Yes, I have spent the last 10 years working on getting the public in Tennessee educated about Tennessee's historical role in the passage of the 19th Amendment. There were 35 states that had ratified the amendment, and it came down to Tennessee became the battleground in the summer of 1920. And there were a lot of things that led up to that, but we'll focus on that there was a governor was running for re-election, and there was a primary. He did not want to call a special election to ratify the amendment until the primary was over. So that's another reason it got pushed even later into the hot Nashville summer. And so what happened is that the women of Tennessee were very divided over the issue of suffrage, as was much of the country. And the arguments that were being given at the time where it was going to destroy the family values. Women didn't need the right to vote. Their husbands took care of those things for them. So Carrie Chapman Catt came into Tennessee on a train, and then about that same day, in one version I've heard, a lady named Josephine Pearson, who was the leader of the anti-suffrage in Tennessee, came in that same night. So they both set themselves up in the Hermitage Hotel, and for a very exciting several weeks, they both lobbied hard for the attention of the legislators that how they were going to vote on the amendment. And at the time, if you were for suffrage, you wore a yellow rose, and if you were against suffrage, you wore a red rose. And my understanding is at that time in Nashville, the red roses were noticeably outnumbering the yellow roses. So they brought in Sue Shelton White and several other women who had been on national campaigns throughout the country to help influence the legislators. And a very prominent lady in Nashville, Ann Dallas Dudley, who was a mother of two small children, but in what you might term a socialite in these days. She put herself out front as a proponent of suffrage, and she let them take pictures of her and her children together, and she led a parade at one point earlier down Broadway, down to Centennial Park, in support of granting women the right to vote. Mm-hmm. So during these few weeks that were going on in Nashville and in the Hermitage Hotel, there was a lot of lobbying going on, very specifically in the Jack Daniels suite, where a lot of alcohol was being given to the legislators, and they were being committed to vote against suffrage. So then there was a Memphis gentleman named Joseph Hanover who lobbied for suffrage and was working with Carrie Chapman Catt, but he actually got beat up in the elevator. So then he had to start having a guard. So it comes down to the time to have the vote in the House. And everyone is crowded up in the top of the balconies, if you've been able to be to the Tennessee legislature, and they are waiting for the vote. But as the vote starts to go down, a young man is presented a note from a messenger, a letter from his mother in East Tennessee named Beth Burns, and she's a widow, and she owns a farm that she has inherited from her husband. However, she cannot vote on the taxes that are put on her farm, and she sends Harry a letter that literally states, "Please vote for suffrage." And he opens this while this vote is going on. And so Harry, who has on a red rose, goes ahead and votes in favor of suffrage. And the crowd in the Capitol erupts, and everyone is so surprised. And he had to, the story goes, escape through a bathroom window because no one expected him to vote that way. Well, Alice Paul, who was the head of the National Women's Party, was up in Washington, D.C., and she had been working on the suffrage issue. So once she got word, there's a famous picture of her in front of the banner where she had been sewing on stars, but she holds up a glass of champagne and toast. And across the country, bells were ringing, except bells didn't ring across Tennessee on that day because the state was so divided at that time about the issue. And another story is that Ann Davis, who is Carl Dean's wife, that her great-grandfather was inside voting against suffrage while her grandmother, his daughter, was outside in her white dress with her banner, voting for protesting for suffrage. So there's a lot of history. The women had parades throughout the country. They stood in front of the White House, but it was a 72-year battle. No gun was fired. Some of them were jailed and force-fed. Sue Shelton White was the only one who was actually jailed from Tennessee when she protested in front of the White House. So we owe a great deal of gratitude for these women. They stood up to some very difficult times and all the social pressures of the time. And with that one vote from Harry Byrne, enfranchised over half the country that could then vote. In the 1920 presidential election, only about 30 women took part in the actual election. But as we see today, women can still be divided on these issues and how we're going to participate in government. As the Tennessee Women's Political Foundation felt that this was such an important event to be memorialized in our history, one of our members, Alma Sanford, and some of y'all may know her, it was her idea to have the monument, because the only recognition of this event is a small bas-relief inside of the Capitol that, is not open to the public all the time. You can't always see. So the Tennessee Women's Political Caucus donated the initial $4,000 to get this idea of Alma's off the ground. And that again shows one woman, one idea, supported by others, can make it happen. So with Alma, put together a 9-member bipartisan board of women from across the state who worked on raising the money. And then we reached out to women across the state for private donations totaling almost $1 million. And when you go to the monument now that is in Centennial Park, you will see these names engraved on the crabapple stone there. I will say I have not seen it in its new permanent place because of the pandemic, but I'm looking forward to it. And in 2020, I'm thinking it was 20, can't remember exactly when we did unveil it, but we unveiled it in a temporary position in Centennial Park. It does feature Carrie Chapman Catt, Sue Shelton White, Ann Dallas Dudley, Frankie Pierce, and Abby Crawford. Frankie Pierce is an African-American woman who spoke on the House legislative floor, saying that the African-American women just wanted a square deal. So we are proud of our inclusivity in those 5 women from all different aspects of Tennessee and the national organizations that made this amendment become ratified during that time period. It was kind of a one-shot deal, the last opportunity they were probably going to have before the 1920 elections. Again, so always a little drama. When we first started working we had gotten all these donations from women across the state of Tennessee, and we told them their names would be engraved at the location site, and we had another site in mind, and that did not work out. So when we went to the city of Nashville, their first response of wanting to accept this almost $1 million gift of a monument with Nashville history, they said, yes, but you cannot put these women's names, or it's not just women, but you cannot put these names on the stone around the monument, because for someone to have their name in Centennial Park, it has to be a much larger donation. A lot of these donations were in the $200 range for the Yellow Rose Society and different organizations that we had put together as to collect the money. So we basically said, no, that cannot happen. We told these women, their names would be a part of the final monument design. And we also stressed, this isn't somebody just donated some money to get their name showing up in the park. They donated this money because it was pretty much a petition that how proud they were of Tennessee's part in ratifying the 19th Amendment, how important they felt that being involved in this project was, and that they are proud of being able to vote as a citizen in this state and country. So I will say we had our president at the time and still is Yvonne Wood, and she was a courageous leader with that, with the city of Nashville, and they accepted our design proposal along with the monument. And I am also looking forward to seeing these names up there, because that's the way I view it. It is a petition, and the organizations that helped put this monument in that place. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I was just going to say I was aware of the broad overview of the events leading up to the ratification of the amendment, but it sounds like it was very, very dramatic for that summer of 1920. And yeah, some of the details you filled in really surprised me. Get someone being beat up in the elevator, but also I'm really struck by the fact that more recently, you were fighting to have this monument erected and names engraved on it, and yet we're still fighting against having women's contributions erased. They didn't want to have those names listed on the monument. So that's really surprising and frustrating and aggravating at the same time.
I will say it was, and that's not a whole lot of the story at the moment, because most of the time you don't want it to distract from this beautiful public artwork about this great historical moment. And we know what monuments can say to a community. But I like the way you said, trying to erase them. Hadn't quite used that phrase, but I know the 9 women that put it together felt very strongly, no, these names will go with this project.
Right. And for those of you who haven't been to see the monument yet, which I have not been able to see it yet, we actually used in our graphic for tonight's event, the back view of it. So you can see that the women are standing alongside each other, but they're also all touching in some way. And so, Adrienne, could you talk a little bit about the symbolism of that?
Yes. So there is a sculptor there in Nashville, Alan LaQuire. He's also done several other pieces of public art in Nashville, but he did a monument in Knoxville, the first Tennessee's woman suffrage monument in Knoxville. Then he was chosen to do this Nashville, Tennessee women's suffrage monument. And in his design, he made sure that the women are supporting and touching each other in some aspect as you go around the monument. And then you will also notice, when you get to see it up close, Sue Shelton White has a little jailhouse pin on her belt. And that, again, signifies that she did go to jail for the right to vote.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'll mention this book. Some of you may have heard of it, The Women's Hour. It came out recently, and it really goes into a lot of great detail about this event in Tennessee history, and also provides some really great pictures of the major players, and also the campaign materials for both for suffrage and anti-suffrage. Some of the things they would say about women. They depict a man coming home from work, finding his children abandoned while the wife is off voting or something like that. So, oh goodness. Well, we do all owe a debt of gratitude to the women of Tennessee and across the country who fought for our right to vote.
Ann Dallas Dudley was important in that campaign because of her motherhood status and because of her social status in Nashville. They really wanted to play on that campaign strategy. But thank you for allowing me to talk about it, Jen.
Yeah, thanks for enlightening us about not only the struggles back then, but the struggles of modern women trying to recognize the significance of that event. So I wanted to bring our other panelists back in. And as I mentioned, I mentioned The Women's Hour by Elaine Weiss. I'm a huge bookworm. And I was looking back over my to be read list, and I noticed that a lot of the books I have recently added pertain to women in Tennessee. I have Ida B. Queen. I want to read that book. There's the Atomic Girls, about the women who worked in the Oak Ridge Laboratory back during World War II. Of course, Dolly has her own biography out now, and so does Tina Turner. So I just wanted to pose the question to you all, in light of women's history and focusing on Tennessee. Do you have a Tennessee shero? Is there someone you've admired, and why, and what have they inspired you to do? So Kelly, why don't we start with you?
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to. Yes, I have several Tennessee sheroes, and not surprisingly, they're all politically involved. I think a long-term hero, someone that I knew about when I was first interested in politics. I guess junior high school, was Annabelle Clement O'Brien. She was the sister of Governor Frank Clement, the aunt Bob Clement, all good Democrats, and she was, I think, only the I think she might have been the second woman elected to this state legislature in Tennessee. And I did not realize it till kind of more recently, but she had been elected to the State House of Representatives and then ran for the state Senate in Tennessee. And while running, she used the slogan, "A woman's place is in the House and in the Senate too." And I didn't realize that there was a Tennessee connection to that wonderful phrase. But
Yeah.
And that kind of shows you just the spark and the moxie that she had, just willing to just put her elbows up and push herself into what had been a man's world. And I gotta give her props for that. In the 70s, that was that was why I took notice of her name in the 70s, is because there weren't very many images, very many opportunities to see women in elected public office, and for her to be one in Tennessee was, it stuck out to me, and it was very inspiring. Sarah Kyle is a local shero, and I've had the opportunity to meet her, but I admired her for years before that. She's really just a wonderful person. I think she was elected to statewide office, and that was pretty remarkable. And then they got rid of the position. I'm trying to remember what the commission was, but anyway, they decided to make it an appointed position instead of elected, and then she ran for state senate, and she's our state senator from the Memphis area now, and does what she can to support other women candidates. She has a PAC, the Yellow Rose PAC, named after the women that fought for our very right to vote, and she donated to my campaign, and I know she donated and supported several other women running in 2018 and probably 2020, and she's just willing to give you her time and any suggestions or help that she can, and that's wonderful. Not just inspiring by the position that she's achieved, but also by reaching back down to pull others up.
Yeah, Senator Kyle is phenomenal, and I didn't know that she had a PAC as well, but I know that I've been watching the legislature this session, and she has proposed a lot of good legislation that would make a profound impact on women's lives in Tennessee.
Yes.
So yeah,
very admirable. And you mentioned, just on a side note, you mentioned Alan LeQuire, and I've known about him for years as an artist. That's kind of an interest of mine, but he not only did the women's suffrage sculpture in Knoxville, he also did the Athena sculpture that sits in the Parthenon. And I think that's very, very representative of powerful women, as the goddess of, knowledge and war. So I think that's an inspiration as well. So yeah, I thought that was, it was quite nice that he did that sculpture.
Yeah, that connection gives us even more reason to go and visit Centennial Park and see all those monuments. Yeah, great. Thank you. And Sue, what about you? Who do you admire?
Well, I work with so many phenomenal women here in Tennessee that I'm going to go back to my roots in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana before I moved to Chicago, and went to college at an all-women's Catholic college, which has since become co-ed. But my shero is the woman who founded the college. She was a sister of Providence, Mother Theodore Guerin, and she and about 4 or 5 other sisters came from France during the 1800s, 1840, to settle in right outside of Terre Haute, Indiana, and found a girls' academy, which later became the college. And she was canonized a saint in October of 2006, and is actually buried there on the campus. The college is still going strong, as are the sisters. So
at a time when,
I'm sorry,
I didn't mean to. I was going to say, at a time when girls were not usually educated, right? She stepped in to give them opportunity. That's amazing.
The education, way back then, it was a lot of, I can just imagine the home skills plus further education beyond that with music and education is, to become educators. And it's continued with nursing, with education, with music, lawyers. There are graduates who have gone into politics on the state level in Indiana, and just an amazing group of women. They, at that time and since. So I have to give all of them props.
For sure. Yeah, there's no shortage of inspiring women here in Tennessee and across the country, for sure. And it goes to show what women can overcome, and what, if they have drive and they have support from others, what they can overcome. So one thing I was thinking about over the summer, as the anniversary of the 19th Amendment was approaching, I was doing some of my own research I ran for office, so I was doing policy campaign research, and I was really struck by several statistics that I learned. Back in 2016, during the presidential election, Tennessee ranked 45th in the country for voter turnout among women. And women only make up, still to this day, about 17% of our elected officials in the state. And that's despite that making up about 51% of the state population. So, and I think, it just got me thinking that those statistics probably correlate to some of the state rankings that Tennessee has. Just to point out some of those statistics, 40% of female-led households in Tennessee live in poverty. 2/3 of women work in the low-wage, workforce, which, as we know, has suffered greatly during the pandemic too. Tennessee ranks 35th in the nation for public school teacher salaries, which the majority we know are made up of women. Our labor workforce gap is between men and women is higher than 42 other states in the country. Mother and infant mortality rates rank 33rd and 38th in the country, meaning our moms and our babies are really not getting the care that they need. And the most dire statistic, I think, is that we rank 5th in the country for the number of women killed by men every year. So when I was learning these statistics, I just couldn't help but think, gosh, the suffragettes, if they knew this, what would they think? They'd be, first of all, disappointed that women were not exercising their right to vote in Tennessee, right? But also that there's so much work that we need to do to bring about equality and equity, because they're not the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you, and I'll start with you, Sue, what do you think is the most pressing issue that women face in our state?
One is the healthcare, like you said, the mortality rates, and the education across the board, whether it be about voting rights, about job opportunities, their personal rights as women, as human beings, as citizens, is very important in my eyes, as well as, you know, seeing the equality regarding pay, regarding jobs. There's so much more we can do and we can help do.
Right. And Kelly, what about you? What do you think is the most pressing issue?
Well, I agree with Sue that, you know, access to healthcare is a huge issue, especially for you know, mothers with children. Just you know, the fact that the number of uninsured is so high, and the number of uninsured children is so high. But you know, access to prenatal care has a huge impact, and also access, you know, afterwards to medical support has a huge impact on mother and infant mortality. But a lot of that comes back to pay equity, and the fact that that women are still so underpaid. And it's really not, I mean, it's shocking, but it's not surprising when you see that an elected woman, Marsha Blackburn, who's a U.S. senator from this state, is 100 years after ratification of the 19th Amendment. And, you know, for the 72-year struggle before that, she's still using the same arguments. She's saying that women don't want equal pay. And I don't know what women she knows, but I've never met a woman that said, no, please pay me less for my hard work. But she should be wearing a red rose all the time, because she would have voted against her own self-interest, against all of our interests, and not ratified the 19th Amendment, because she still clings to those arguments that were stale and ill-advised then and haven't improved, but she's holding us all back. And just the fact that she gets elected in the state, you know, it's like, I think a lot of that goes back to, I don't think she's really representative of us. I think that, you know, gerrymandering and voter suppression has allowed people with such, you know, antiquated ideas to retain power. And I think that we need a shotgun approach. You know, I think we really do need to, we need to focus on making sure redistricting is more fair and more representative. We need to make sure that, you know, that people understand the impact their vote has, and that we can make things better for everybody and get, you know, better healthcare and better pay and better education, you know, better paid women in education, better paid teachers. It's just, it all ties into one another. But I really think, and I'm sure all of you have experienced that in your lives here in Tennessee, that you find out that, you know, a peer doing the same work either is being considered for a promotion that you deserve, or is getting paid a little more, you know, or you know, gets a cushier job or an easier route, you know, up the ladder. Everybody has stories. It's as ubiquitous as Me Too stories, that everyone has encountered that workplace inequity. And I think, you know, it'll be a long slog. I'm hoping it's not a 72-year battle, but you know, if we can reignite the ERA, I think that might force Tennessee to be dragged kicking and screaming into equity.
So. And Adrian, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this topic too. What do you think?
Well, yeah, actually, we are about to hit the 50th anniversary of the, you know, starting for passage of the ERA. The National Women's Political Caucus was founded in 1971 in a response to efforts to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, and it was Gloria Steinem, Shirley Chisholm, Fannie Lou Hamer, let's see, Bella Asbug, and I believe Jill Rucklehouse was a Republican. So a bipartisan group that was pro-choice and pro-ERA. I think what both of you have brought up about the medical issues for women, we are physically different than men. We go through different stages in our life. We need different medical care, but it does not mean that we are any less of a human being. We are any less smart because of it. And we just need the medical community to listen to our needs as we biologically transfer through these stages of our natural life. With that said, when our diminished economically, we lose out. And it is part of my own story. I have two grown children, but when my son was young, he had a toddler. He could not go to daycare anymore. And so I was forced out of the workforce, just like the women in the pandemic now, to stay home with him because there were no other arrangements. Well, when I went to try and go back into the workforce, it was extremely difficult. And even with my education and experience with a defense contractor and a Fortune 500 company, basically I met into a lot of, well, it'd be nice to have you answer our phone. So I feel those are trigger items for me as I watch these bright young women during this pandemic who are forced to step home and provide childcare and take care of their families. And now so many of them, when they try to enter back into the workforce, I'm concerned that they're going to meet with those same barriers that I had. And just as I carried a sign for the Women's March that said our daughters are watching, I think our daughters are watching now. How is my mother going to be treated? How is this going to help my family? Because when you take that woman out of the workforce, she could lose her medical benefits. She loses financial security for her family that it had before. And what she's going to use later that isn't always apparent at the time, you are talking about a significant loss of retirement income, an income that could go back into her community. So one thing there used to be in Tennessee, a Women's Economic Council that was funded by the state, and it put out a yearly report on the status of women in Tennessee, and it was made very, very readily available to the corporations. Well, in 2015, our Republican legislature let that office sunset. It was no longer funded. And I know I'm not alone, but I have been trying to bring up to our, especially female legislators who are just in a tsunami of negativity in Nashville. We need to revive the Women's Economic Council. We need these numbers. We need this data. We need to be able to show people how the women of Tennessee have been affected during this pandemic and get legislation and support from our corporations who use our female workforce to make the community better and make their profits. So that's out there. I don't know if it'll happen or not. Jen is even more familiar with the legislative calendar, which is like turning from a good jog into a fast-paced trek.
Yeah, everything is starting to really fly through the legislature now, but I don't think that's a priority. And that council, in addition to studying economic aspects of women in the workforce, it also did research concerning things like how much money our law enforcement spends on domestic violence issues every year, which was, I think I read once, was like close to $1 billion. And that's really a sad state of affairs. But it's something that our state legislators and government officials who are creating our budget need to be aware of, because, not only do we have to budget for that, but if we could legislate that would prevent some of that violence from occurring, we could, I don't know. It's frustrating to me that they don't want to make that a priority at all. Yeah. And
I understand personally what Adrian is talking about. It's like when you're forced to go out of the workforce. I stepped out of a full-time position to work freelance part-time while my children were young, and not really expecting how difficult, because I was still working in my field. I didn't expect how difficult it would be to re-enter, and it was as if you're just starting over, as if you have no experience, and it's frustrating. So you kind of lose your earning power, you lose lifetime earning. And I didn't think about it at the time, but you lose that earning towards your retirement. It's like your Social Security, wages are nil for that time, and it has a huge impact. But we don't really, and I think the pandemic is going to really shine a spotlight on that, because so many people, and usually it's women, if the lesser paid of a couple stays home to make sure their children are taken care of and get to do Zoom school, it's usually the woman. So it's going to have a huge impact on their lifetime earnings, their earning towards retirement. And I'm hoping that because it affects so many women, there will be forward motion in it, that there will be a kind of they'll be forced to reckon with it. Because we don't honor unpaid work, whether it's child rearing or keeping your house, staying home to educate your children. None of that is recognized, and some countries do that. I think it's and mostly that is women's impact through the course of their life. And I think we need to address that at the national level, so that it's not up to what state you live in, how bad your situation is, and how much it impacts you.
Right. And I think those countries that do honor, stay-at-home moms, or with maybe like a universal income, have more women in leadership roles too in the government. Yes. And I relate to you and Adrian and Kelly. I also stepped away from my career when I had my second child, because I could not find childcare in the West. I lived in Hickman County at the time. We did not have enough childcare options. And no one I spoke to in my family, who, when I was trying to make this decision, pointed out to me that, it's really going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get back into the workforce, and it is going to impact you financially down the road. And that's something I wish I had considered more. And I think on a national level, we are having these conversations now. If we see any movement, it will have to come from the federal level down to Tennessee, because I don't think our Tennessee legislature on their own is going to address those issues, unfortunately.
And I was wanting to add, I'm in the unique position of, with being non-binary and looking masculine, and recognizing the female, my female self, that being able to advocate for women's roles in the workforce, at home, with the health care. But I struggle in my own self with how people see me. They see me as male, that they automatically hand that privilege to me, which can be a difficult thing to speak to. And that's one of the reasons I am so happy that I'm sitting here with the panel, that yes, I'm treated differently by virtue of what people see versus who I am, and just trying to educate on that, so that I can help with bringing closer the equality and the equity that we're striving for.
And I appreciate that, with the privilege that's handed to you just from other people's perceptions, that I know you use it to advocate for the things that are important to women of all stripes, women across the board. So recognizing that privilege and using it to be a voice for those things is a wonderful thing, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. It's important that we're all here together, working together.
Yeah, I think one thing that we can learn from the mistakes of that period of time during the 19th Amendment ratification is that, like I pointed out at the beginning, white women were given the right to vote at that time, not all women. And so I think as moving forward in this year 2022, we have to realize that we have the opportunity to include and uplift all women. And it's our duty to do that. And so I'm really glad you're here, Sue, and sharing your experiences with us. Thank you. So I also wanted to talk about your organizations and the advocacy work that you're all doing, and talking about what sort of activities your organizations are doing and what policies you're advocating for. Adrian, do you want to start off and tell us more about the TWPC?
Sure, I would love to. The Tennessee Women's Political Caucus is in the process of a reorganization. We have had one in Tennessee before. It was inactive for a while, but we've been working hard, and we look forward to being a statewide network for progressive women. We are currently working on establishing 3 local caucuses in each Grand Division of Tennessee. Jen will graciously be looking into putting one for Middle Tennessee. Sable Ote is for West Tennessee, and we're working on our East Tennessee connection. And we are unique in that we are connected to a national organization that gives us access to program and women who have been involved in national endeavors. And one of those projects right now is called Appoint Women, and you can Google that, appointwomen.org, I believe it is, connected to the National Women's Political Organization. It is a very in-depth website that will tell you all about how to apply and what you would need to have for a position in the Biden-Harris administration. Then they have your connection to the Plum Book, which has many of those positions listed. They are working directly with the White House. There are about 4,000 positions. About half of them have already been filled. They have a national group of women who will review your application and will offer up suggestions and constructive criticism to make you what they call appointment ready. I say this is beneficial to women in almost any level of their career who would benefit from that kind of advice. You do not have to be a member of our organization, and you can just go to the website and learn more information. The other major thing that we are working on, coming up sometime early fall, we will be having a training session for women who want to run for office, focused mainly on hopefully women of color and women who have never run before and are just thinking about it and literally don't have any idea. But hopefully the discussions we're having in the community now, that women will start to realize that their vote does count, and it is important that they go to the polls and that they realize who's sitting at the table. If they don't want to run themselves, then maybe they can support a woman who will voice their concerns and their needs in the policymaking arena. So thank you. I hope you all will look up Tennessee Women's Political Caucus.
And we'll make sure to put those links in our chat box too, so that people can find your websites. I recently joined the Tennessee Women's Political Caucus last year after they endorsed my campaign, and it's a great supportive organization. I'm so thrilled to be part of it. So Sue dropped off, but she's back now, so thank you. And Kelly, I know you're going to run for office, and that's one of your priorities. Do you want to tell us about your campaign priorities and what you're doing with the Rutherford County Democratic Party?
Yes, what we're doing with Rutherford County Democratic Party right now, we're starting our Run, Fight, Win candidate and campaign training because we kind of want to build a bench so we have people that know how to run campaigns to either run themselves or to work on campaigns to help elect women. We're doing candidate recruitment. If there's anyone out there in Rutherford County that has ever thought or been told, you should run for office, then we need to talk to you, even if it's not, this go round or next. It's like if you can get involved and get to know the components of a successful campaign, we're looking for folks to do that. There's several members of our organization that are doing the DNC T3 train the trainer kind of program, so that we'll have a deep bench for training people, especially as the next election cycle approaches. We've recently been a community partner with the rent and utilities relief program that the federal government is doing, hoping to increase our outreach to the community and partner with other civic organizations and activists that are in Rutherford County, so we can let people know that we're here and we believe in this all the time, not just during the election cycle.
Yeah.
That we walk the walk.
So that's important to build those bridges in the community in the off cycle time. Yeah. That's great.
It is. And I think that it increases those connections and increases the number of people that are, willing to show up and speak up and help with voter engagement and voter registration and all the things that we need to kind of lift up more voices and get people engaged so that we can be more representative. And I believe that when that happens, more Democrats get elected. So that's our push and our focus in Rutherford County right now, and supporting the folks that have run before. So if they feel like they can put their lives into that full force, that we're there for them. We've had some great candidates from Rutherford County and the surrounding areas, and I'm hoping we can have some wonderful folks to put up again in the next go round.
Yeah, I see one of your former candidates, Matt Ferry, has commented on the live stream. Hi, Matt. It's good to see you too. So, and as our neighbors to the east, Rutherford County. Sorry, my kids are coming back from the walk that they were supposed to be on, and you probably hear them in the background. Oh, okay. There's a boo-boo.
Oh no.
Oh, someone's got a boo on their knee. Okay, Daddy's there. He'll help them. Sorry, everyone. But yeah, Rutherford County, like Williamson County, I think we're the two great hopes for maybe flipping some seats in the next election cycle. We saw some of the few districts in the last election that swung a little bit left, I think.
Yes, I think Rutherford County continues to grow and continues to grow more blue as we grow. I think we're more purple than we are red, and I think that we have some flippable seats that in the next election cycle, I think we might be able to turn over, and that would be great, not just for the county and representing our citizens, but also for the state. It's like if we can flip seats, it helps us, but it helps give us a stronger voice to make more progress in the state legislature. And I'm excited about that possibility.
Yeah, that's great. And Sue, will you tell us about what the Rutherford County Democratic Women are up to these days?
Absolutely. This past year has been threw us all for a loop. I know with COVID-19 and how we were unable to meet in person. We've gone through some restructuring and have a lot of energy. We've had a membership push over the last year where we've gone from a handful of people or a couple handfuls of people to over 80 members. Our membership is open to everyone. Offices can be held by women and non-binary individuals. We have been working with some of the same people that Kelly and RCDP has been working hand in hand with RCDP, with the government grants for rent and housing. We've been doing a lot of internal education with wanting to get everybody trained for helping register people to vote so that we can help get our residents ready to vote and educated. And part of our process, we've done a lot of PPE distribution, which has been very helpful to different organizations in the county, and been doing other outreach as well, and planning on staying and getting even more involved during this upcoming year and in the future.
That's great. And everyone can see in the comment section that we've put the links to all of our websites and how to get in touch. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if there are any questions from the audience, we can take some of those now. But if you all want to just quickly tell everyone how to get involved, how to sign up, or how to reach out to you, you can go ahead and mention that. Kelly, do you want to start? Or
yes, we have a Facebook page. I think the link is in the comments. RCDP number 4 TN, and we rcdp.org is our website, and you can send us messages on there if you want to get involved or volunteer. We're planning to get back to social events. Now that the weather is nice, we're going to do some outdoor what we call True Blue Tuesdays, where we get together to socialize. And we used to have those at restaurants, but for the upcoming spring and summer, we'll be planning some outdoor events, and we usually have some music and food, and it's a good kind of very no pressure social way to get to know all the other Democrats that you don't think are out there. So you can watch our Facebook page for notifications about those coming up, or just reach out to me, Kelly, at rcdp.org, and I'll respond to you personally. But we always have things going on, and ways for, whatever your time. I like to say that we have, life-centered bites. It's like if whatever your life will allow, we'll find some way for you to be a part of it. And we have some very dedicated volunteers that'll be really happy to have you step in and help out.
one thing I love is that as we all become more involved in different organizations, we learn that the network of Democrats across the state is actually more extensive than most people believe. So that's partly why Williamson County Democratic Party likes to have these events, so we can show that there's a lot more Democrats out there than people think, and we can all support each other. Adrian, how do people join TNWPC? No, you're still muted, I think.
Of our event, and we also have a website at nwpctn.org. We'd like to love for you to go to it and check us out. What I would like to add about that, there are more Democrats than you might realize. For every activity that you do, there's still that couple of people who are hanging back, watching you and taking note, and you're going to be surprised. It might be a year, it might be 2 years. They're going to come back around and say, I've been watching the signs in your yard. I've been watching what you do. I watch how you speak, and it's influencing people. And I think, it's not easy right now to be a Democrat in Tennessee, or to be a progressive woman, or have the values that we are projecting for a more equitable society. It's being drowned out by a lot of noise, but people are listening. And again, Jen, thank you so much for letting me be a part of the discussion and meeting these wonderful women from Rutherford County.
Well, thank you, Adrian, for sharing your experiences and knowledge with us. And Sue, will you tell everyone how to get involved with the Rutherford County Democratic Women before we leave?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rutherford County Democratic Women. You can link to us on Facebook at Rutherford County Democratic Women. You can search for me, of course. I have a picture of my cat as my display. Our email is rucodemwomen@gmail.com, and you can message us there as well. Any level of activity is wonderful, even if it's just showing up to a meeting, saying hi, being present on the on Facebook. Like Kelly was mentioning, for RCDP, we're going to be planning, once the weather gets nicer, hopefully some physically distance appropriate activities outside. Our meetings right now are online through Zoom. And last month we held a meet and greet where we had some wonderful games and gave away some prizes. So it's not all getting down to business. We do want to enjoy ourselves as well. And we welcome anyone who might have interest.
Yay. And I'll add that Williamson County also has a Democratic Women chapter, and you can get involved with that. And our Williamson County Democratic Party meets monthly via Zoom right now, but we are also hoping to have some socially distant outdoor events this spring. And yeah, we're looking forward to meeting new people and getting out there and maybe turning Tennessee a little bit blue, hopefully. Bit by bit, we're going to do it, right? So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you to my panelists. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation, maybe learned something about our history, and are inspired to get out there and do the work that we need to do to make Tennessee a more equitable state for everyone. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue.
It's nice to meet y'all. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.